You're driving for one of the biggest stars ever.
They decided, well, being I'm the new guy, put me on this top bunk, 360 pounds. So I had to prove myself. And I see this little car in front of me, swerve to the right. And so I'm sitting there trying to restart it. It cranked up, put it in gear, give it gas, and it took off for about 5 seconds to die.
You don't say no to much.
She was telling me that Johnny's wish was to ride a tour bus one more time. I got the phone call saying, hey, you're going to be driving a band bus for Paul McCartney. But yeah, it was awkward first, when I first walked on that bus the first time. Get it while you can, buddy. You never know when that day happens when you can.
Alan Sowersby, welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
I've been waiting a while to
I know it.
to come over and visit with you, hang out.
How long have we talked about this now? Do we have any idea?
Oh, a couple of years.
Yeah.
Or more.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple of years or more.
Yeah. Well, I know I've been talking about this for years, literally years, since I really dove into the nonprofit space and worked with the men and women that you've even got to serve alongside me and many others. And with this show, there's a lot of podcasts that we're going to be doing that are going to be heavy, that are going to be really, really talking about overcoming adversity and shining light on those stories and lending hope. And when I met you, the night that I met you, I knew right out of the gate, just looking in your eyes, how much hope you lend and how much love you give to others.
Wow.
And you're one of the guys that I see so many people I know there's a lot of people that want to talk to you. There's a lot of people that call you, and I also know that you don't say no to much.
No,
and
try not to.
Yeah. And,
Well, now I met you, brother. I got to admit, you were pretty impressive to me.
well, I felt the same way.
That was where was that at?
That was in Llano, Texas, at
Llano,
Cooper's
Texas.
Barbecue.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, man. I remember I was sitting there eating, and I kept seeing this good-looking guy helping people, and helping out and walking around, and like what I mean by good-looking, like dressed up like you were maybe the owner of this place. That's what I was thinking. That's why when I come up to
I think you asked me if I was the owner, actually. Yeah, and just for the audience, I'll give them a little background that what we were doing was that was actually a hunt that we lined up for I won't state the agency, but there was 12 very high level military gentlemen there and 3 generals, Army generals, along with General Sisko, who obviously people are going to hear about you and what you've got to do with George Strait, and you brought the tour bus up to bring, I want to say 18 people up.
Yeah.
Some of the ones that I will mention was guys like Mike Judge from Beavis and Butthead, the creator of Beavis Butthead, Tito from Tito's Vodka, and of course General Howell, General Sisko, General Hutmacher.
Yep.
And I know there was plenty. Ted Nugent.
Yeah, that was quite a night, man.
Yeah.
Sitting there in front of sitting there eating barbecue, and those guys were playing. Ted Nugent and then also Jimmy Vaughn.
Yes.
Was there.
Yeah.
And,
Chris Layton.
The late Stevie Ray Vaughan's drummer.
Yes, sir.
Real cool guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was quite a night. And,
yeah, and just to end it up or wrap it up on that was that we were all there to put together a hunt, which was put together through a buddy of mine at one of the organizations that I worked with, and he did all of the work or most of the work on that. But it was a hog hunt for some guys that were in the state together, which is rare to get that many men together at their level.
Exactly.
And I know we had dogs, we had drones, we had infrared, we had 90,000 acres on 12 different ranches, and they hog hunted.
Man, it was quite a sight. There was a lot of people involved there in that.
Yeah.
That got involved in that. Man.
Yeah, and so you brought. Did you bring one of George Strait's tour buses up that night, or one of the ones that he leases?
Actually, it was another bus that a good friend of mine let us use.
Remind me who it was. John
Davis.
Yes.
John Davis, great guy.
Yeah.
And so when he knew what we were doing, and what we were doing, he had no problem with it. So
yeah.
Thank you, John Davis.
Yeah, every time, and I know he's been involved with more than that after that. So.
Several times with when we were trying to raise money for the troops.
Yes, sir.
And we had that big auction, I guess it was, or something like that. Yeah. The time I made a mistake with the little switch. I'm not even going to talk about that.
Yeah. But man, so
Uh,
tonight, I know there's a lot of people that would just be thrilled to hear about where actually the space that you're in and what you do, and knowing, and I want to get into that
yeah.
with George and how long you've been with him. But let's talk about that for a moment. First of all, how did you meet and hook up with George Strait's Ace in the Hole band?
Well, actually, a good friend of mine, Leroy Eichler, was George's drummer. I mean, well, he's a drummer, but he was George's driver for, since George basically got going.
Bus driver.
Yeah. So we were
Okay.
mutual friends because I was a drummer as well. And so one day Leroy called me up and asked me if I wanted to go to work driving for the Ace in the Hole band. And of course, that was a no-brainer. I took the job and been there now for right at 20 years. As of now. So,
Wow.
and so it opened a lot of doors for me too, because when you work for George Strait, a lot of people, they think, well, if you can drive good for George, you can drive good for us. So,
Yeah.
I got calls from other companies and to go work, and so it's kind of opened up a door for me.
Yeah.
As well. But yeah, so Leroy, hired me and been there ever since. Missed, I think, one day in almost 20 years now.
He has.
I have.
Is that right?
Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
And that was because of Paul McCartney, because I was on that tour. And so it ran right up to the end of when we had to go out on tour. And so I ended up, and we were going to play Las Vegas. So I ended up flying in there and letting the driver that relieved me to help me out, let him go home. So
yeah,
I didn't miss the whole thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's kind of how all that goes. But yeah.
What was it like working for Paul McCartney?
Oh, great. Those guys everyone in that organization is easygoing, nice, and probably one of the biggest thrills of my life, because, I've always been a big fan of the Beatles and Paul McCartney. Then when I got the phone call saying, hey, you're going to be driving band bus for Paul McCartney. Are you okay with that? I went, oh yeah, I'm good. When do I go? And so I remember the first night we were there. The first night I walked into the stadium, and we were getting ready to leave. About an hour later, and I remember looking up there thinking, "There's Paul McCartney right there."
That's your first time seeing him.
Yeah, first time seeing him.
Yeah,
and that was in, I think, 2012, I think, or something like that. The first time. Yeah. With Paul, and then I've driven him since, and several times. So it was a great fun time, and those guys all treat you just like you're one of them.
Yeah.
They don't treat you any different. As far as security goes, you just walk by the stage and they know who you are, and they're, so it was a great experience for me. So.
Well, I've heard you mention it quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that tour. And I'd love to go back on it again. So.
Who are some of the other guys that you've really spent some time on the road with? And I'll say, I've been in the vehicle with you on several occasions where there's guys like Shenandoah's calling you, or Clay Walker, and I don't even know who you're on the phone with until after you're off the phone. But
yeah, I've got into this thing where I'm helping other people. I can't do everything. I can't go on every driving job, and so I've got a lot of friends, including my son, my grandson, and my nephew that are also drivers. So I have a lot of communication. So I get calls a lot from people like Clay Walker and Diamond Rio. And then Tanya Tucker and things like that. That if they need a driver, I'll if I can't do it, I'll find them one. In other words.
Yeah. How many family members have you put driving buses?
Oh man, let's see, 1, 2, about 5.
And our buddy Bruce Colley.
Bruce Colley, yeah, ex NFL football player.
Yeah.
With the 49ers driving buses.
Yeah.
He's an awesome guy too.
Yes, he is. I remember meeting Bruce whenever we had Matt Hughes, Bruce, David Mantle, Mickey's boy.
Oh gosh.
And you and I at that Aaron Watson show. And
Bruce is like a giant when even with me.
Yeah.
When I stand next to Bruce, he's like
he's got to be 6'7", 6'8", 6'6", somewhere in there. Yeah.
At least that.
Yeah, and he also, I remember just thinking what a true man of God he is. And I remember asking him, I was like, dude, if I ever did like a men's retreat, would you, this was on the phone, I said, would you at all consider leading that, and I didn't hear a thing. And I was like, "Are you still with me?" And he was like, "Yes, absolutely yes." And I know we haven't talked since, but I know he also he's got 13 kids, and recently
Yeah,
lost a daughter
lost
in
a
the plane
daughter,
accident.
unfortunately. Yep,
Yeah, and to
yep,
see him come through that the way that he has with
yep,
his faith has been
exactly.
inspiring.
He's very
Yeah,
motivated and motivator. Bruce is.
yeah,
If he sees you're down at all or anything, he'll talk to you. He'll bump you up, and it may be not. It may not be no little. You know, tells you like it is.
yeah,
Like straighten up, kind of a thing.
yeah.
And
Good.
I've
Speak
learned
truth.
to listen to him a lot. Super guy.
Well, speaking of that, what would just stand out, just what stands out in other people. Again, when I started this show today, I told you what stands out to me, and it's this. Do you have any idea where this heart of service and love that you have came from, and have you always had it?
I've always had it. I mean, I've always cared for other people, and if I can do something, if I can give somebody something that I don't need to make them happy, I'll do it. And but I've always kind of had a love for people. I have. And
Yeah,
I'm just saying, military. Bless their hearts. People go out there and sacrifice a lot for us, and it's time we give back. You know.
yeah, and I know is George Strait. Any idea how many homes he's given away with the Military Warrior Support Foundation with General Cisco?
Garrett, I don't know exactly. I
I
just know
think I
that
do.
at every concert,
Yeah,
there's a home given away. General Leroy Cisco and
yeah,
George, and they've got a lot of backers that
yeah,
donate money.
yeah,
Like Justin Booths and Justin Shirts and a lot of places. As far back as I can remember, they've given the home away every time. And these are some great people. I just met. We just got back from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and so I got to meet the hero. They got the new house, and
yeah,
just a super guy. You just feel for this guy, and he's went through a lot of things, health wise.
yeah,
Served in Afghanistan and different places
yeah.
over there, and but to sit down and talk to these people, they're so appreciative.
Were
For
you supporting the military before George, or did that really bring it to light for you?
I think more after working for George, and
Yeah,
getting involved in this, I just never thought about it.
yeah,
I mean, I knew my dad was in the Navy. He was a Navy pilot himself,
yeah,
so I was around military, my whole life, growing up, and so I got really more involved thinking about it after, and of course, General Cisco, he's a super guy.
yeah,
He just can't say enough about it, and
yeah,
do enough, And
yeah.
same as you there, buddy. You know, I I appreciate what you do too, and all that you're doing, Garrett.
Well, I thank you,
Yeah,
and it means as much. I've always said I'm getting as much out of it as anybody else is
me
because
too.
it's truly reshaped my life. And I don't have a logo up here, but this podcast is called Dying to Live
Hmm.
for a very good reason. And without getting into the details, but to let the audience know, I mean that was what I had spray painted on my wall in huge letters after my best friend had took his wife's life and took his own in April of '95, and I got hooked on drugs and was out of dope and a rock bottom moment and looking at my third rehab. And I, 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 for some reason, saw this blue can of spray paint and spray painted it on my wall. And several weeks later, the SWAT team kicks in my door. And I remember being so ashamed of that being on my wall. But years later, and as my life has transitioned into something that's unrecognizable to what it was then, I realize now that although I meant that I was killing myself thinking that I was living, dying to live,
Hmm.
now I realize that I've got to die to my own selfish desires to really even have any life. And much like my faith in our Lord.
Hmm.
So, but that's where the podcast name came from. And I think it's fitting enough that people are curious about where we're going to go with this. And that's why I wanted to bring you on today was because there's so many of the stories, as I mentioned earlier, that are going to be so heavy that I wanted to bring some good, fun, light stuff on here today. And that's just what you bring.
Well, I
So
appreciate that, man.
much like what you think about General Cisco, we think of you.
Well, I
So thank you.
appreciate that. very,
Yeah.
very much, man.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to the, the future. I'm looking forward to a lot of things that to come.
Me too.
And I'm prepared for it. I'm prepared and ready
Yeah.
and just whatever it takes, to
Yeah.
make everything happen and get involved.
Well,
So,
thank you for that. You've
yeah,
always answered my call. So let's talk
yeah.
about you a little bit. Where do you come from?
I was born in California, Navy family. My dad was in San Diego, born in
Okay.
California. We moved to Kingsville, Texas, Navy
Okay.
base in Kingsville. And then we moved from Kingsville to Georgia, then back to Texas. And that's kind of where we stayed, was in Corpus Christi area.
Okay.
So I consider Corpus Christi my hometown.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I went to school there and had all my fun times there. Met my wife there of 51 years. Yeah, that's right, honey. 51 years. When I think
Yeah.
back. But so, yeah, I met her there and had, all my good times there, and graduated high school there. And so I always kind of lean towards going back to Corpus Christi as my hometown. So,
Is she good with that?
yeah.
Is she?
Yeah. Yeah. Man. Yeah, she's good with that.
Well, I know I'm going to
Yeah.
be joining her on Sunday, and it reminds me of a story that you just recently told me that I don't know that you'd share if I didn't ask you to. But
Yeah.
legend Johnny Rodriguez
Yep.
just passed away, and I want you to share with us what you got to do for him.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So I get a phone call from his daughter and his wife, and so she was telling me that Johnny's wish was to ride a tour bus one more time. And so Johnny, of course, was in a hospital in Houston, Texas, and they'd asked me to come pick him up and take him to another hospital in San Antonio.
And he's how old at this point?
73. And so, Johnny, of course, has always played guitar his whole life and
Yeah.
was a guitar player, and that took a toll on him being able to play his
Yeah.
music. So I borrowed a tour bus from William Beckman,
Yes.
which was nice enough to let me use it.
Yes, sir.
Went to Houston, pulled up behind the hospital, and called them and told them I'm here. And so
Did he know you were coming?
they knew I knew I was coming. So all the doctors and all that released Johnny, and then Johnny, they rolled him out the back door and they carried him onto my bus and put him in like a couch seat, which is kind of like behind me right here.
Yeah.
So we took off after we got Johnny situated and everything, and so we took off, heading back to San Antonio. And the tour bus, about 50 miles out, decides it's going to quit on me. It died on me, just out of nowhere. I'm sitting there pushing the throttle, nothing. And keep in mind, this is like in a construction area where there's nowhere to go. I mean, there was trucks passing me up, 18-wheelers passing me up. I looked in my mirror, they're right behind me. And so I'm sitting there trying to restart it. It cranked up, put it in gear, gave it gas, and it took off for about 5 seconds and died. And so this went on for quite a while. I finally got enough speed up to get off the road, and sure enough, when I got off the road, there was a truck stop sitting there. So I pulled in there, and I'm thinking like, oh, Johnny's got like enough pain medicine to hold him over until we get to this hospital in San Antonio. And so pulled in there, and I'm like panicking, like calling people, like, what could I do?
Yeah.
Nobody had any idea. So I went back there and I started pulling wires and I checked the radiator, and it was a little low. So I thought, well, I'll just grab some antifreeze and stick it in there. And I did. And so meanwhile, they're calling the hospital in Houston, like, send an ambulance to get Johnny. This could be a bad situation. So cranked the bus up. I give it a few minutes, and it seemed to be okay. So we took off, and it was raining. It was just a bad day. And so we made it all the way to San Antonio, and was able to get Johnny off and into the hospice.
Yeah,
basically. And then that's when he passed away, about maybe 3 or 4 days later.
Wow,
something like that. But
wow.
I'm glad I got to do it. And I've always loved Johnny. He's always been a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
And so he wanted to ride the bus one more time, and that's what I did. I went up there and got him and brought him.
Beautiful, man.
So,
yeah, you're a good friend.
Yeah. I mean, nobody really knows that, but they will now.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think they should. That's why I wanted to
yeah,
bring it up, and I know
thanks.
you bet. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I say, this is going to be played later, but they're having that memorial this Sunday
Yes, sir.
at Texas Pride. But anyway, so
Yeah. I'll be
you'll be there.
escorting
Take some
Mary
pictures for
Jo.
me. You
I
know, I
will.
can't make it.
I
I gotta
sure
go to
will.
work, man. I got to call. Then I gotta go. I gotta fly to California and drive back to Nashville and fly home.
Well, that's really what's almost humorous to me is that I know who you're going to get, and you were like, you slid your phone to me the other day, and you said, I'm not sure I know who
I
this
still don't
is,
know
and,
who they
and you're
are.
driving for Hardy,
Hardy.
and
Okay.
Hardy's one of the biggest songwriters out there right now.
Okay. I
and
didn't
singers in
know.
Nashville.
All I know is I got a call and message. Can you fly up there? And I went, yeah, I'll do it. And so, and I've been waiting for this day, the 8th, to go to this memorial or this tribute. They call it a tribute to Johnny Rodriguez. My brother will be there.
Yeah.
And Kenny Penny will be
Yes,
there.
sir.
And he'll be playing. They were the original guys with Johnny Rodriguez. I mean, not the original, but they were the last band for Johnny.
Yeah.
So Kenny, my brother, and so they'll be playing up there. But
Surely Johnny and George played together.
they have
Oh,
in
yeah.
the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, way back there.
Yeah.
Way back there. Yeah, Johnny worked with George Jones and Merle Haggard, all of them.
Yeah.
You know, I know him and Tanya Tucker were really good friends because she was, you know, real concerned about Johnny whenever,
Yeah.
you know, he was in the hospital in Houston. But
Well, speaking of Tanya, how long have you guys known each other?
I've known her for many years, but just more so the last 5 years, because one of our band members, Joe Manuel, is good friends with Tanya as well, and so I got a phone call from her, or maybe her manager, to drive her shopping, not on a tour, but I was shopping for clothes and stuff. So I agreed to do it.
Yeah.
And so since then, I've driven for her quite a bit.
Yeah.
You know, super lady also. Just
So is her daughter, Presley.
yeah, Presley.
Yeah, I think you remember we got to host 5 Purple Heart veterans
That's
over in
right.
Gonzales with Parker
And
McCollum,
Gonzales.
directly
right.
through Nickelback,
Mhm.
and between Shenandoah and Presley and a few others, they made sure that
We got 'em all
all these guys
backstage.
had access. And literally, Michael Kruger from Nickelback put us with Nathan, and Nathan said, "I got 2 options for you. We can either put you out there, and we're 150 yards away. We can put you out here side stage, or we can put you right in front of the stage, but it's going to be loud." And I was like, "Well, let's go look." And he was like, I could barely keep up with this guy. And we go through the gates, you know, and he's got all his badges, security, and all this. He said, "We can put you here, or we can put you right up there." And we walked back through the gates underneath the stage and popped out right up front. And here's the stage. And I looked at it and I was like, "Well, let's go back and check on them, see what they think." And I went back and talked to them. They were like, "We want to be up front." So we had, I would say, about 12 veterans and 2 or 3 volunteers right there.
Yeah, I know
a lot of that thanks to Presley.
Yeah. Oh,
Tanya's daughter.
She's a sweetheart.
Yeah.
Presley is.
Yeah.
And so I know a couple of those guys were actually missing legs, right? Or one guy was missing both legs.
We had a double amputee Marine by the name of Travis Green.
Yeah.
And then we had a double arm amputee Marine by the name of Eddie Wright.
Yes.
So,
yeah, if you remember the first night we went on stage.
yes.
Remember, because I had to leave with Tanya.
That's correct.
I was there with Tanya driving
and
her
that
bus.
was thanks to you.
Yeah. So we went on the stage during Tanya's performance. That's right. And I had to leave, and I think that y'all stayed there another couple of days.
We sure did.
Yeah.
We sure did.
See, I missed all that fun.
Yeah.
I was broke down in Tanya's bus in Dallas, Texas.
Boy, these buses break down.
They do. This was on a Saturday night, and I had planned on being home on Sunday morning. Yeah. So I come back from the hotel and crank the bus up, and they're all getting ready to get ready to go. And I hit the slide button for the slide, and it wouldn't come in. So it was literally the next day until Prevost come out there and manually brought that slide in. So anyways, that's what happened to us after we left.
Yeah. Well, it was. Thanks for all you did.
Oh,
you
yeah,
there.
yeah. Welcome,
so all of these years and all of these artists that you're working with, that you've been able to work with, and do you have any idea how many artists you've driven for? I don't think that there's very many that I could name that you haven't. I mean, how long were you with Kenny Chesney?
Kenny, I did like 2 years with him, 2-year tour, which consisted of 6 months. So literally, I'd be out 6 months. I lived in Texas, everybody else lived in Nashville. So I would
Yeah.
be literally in Nashville for 6 months on that tour.
How was it with Alice in Chains?
Oh, cool. That was cool. Yeah, we were in Canada. When I worked for those guys, we were in Canada. And so Mike, the bass player, and everybody, they would ride right in the front of the bus with me. Tour manager, we all just hovered in the front, going down the road.
How about Lady Gaga?
Lady Gaga was cool. I didn't directly drive her. I drove her band.
Okay.
So, but she was sweet. I know she was real nice to the people that worked for her.
Yeah.
You know, I can remember one night that Lady Gaga was out passing out chicken wings to all the workers, just with a box like, "Here, y'all want some chicken wings?" And I remember that about her. You know, but
I was talking with Garrett Dickens, who's our videographer here, and one of the things that he thought I ought to ask you is give us one or two of these artists that has impacted you the most throughout the years.
Okay.
Or give me a couple of examples of when you were impacted.
Well, you know, I'm gonna go back to Paul McCartney for a minute.
All right.
Okay. Because, you know, Paul McCartney is totally a super guy. And, you know, he didn't really ride the buses that much. He flew his airplane everywhere. He would just hang on the bus. When the show was over, there was 3 tour buses that were band buses. So those 3 buses would take off and we'd drive through like New York City or wherever, just cruising around. Yeah. And they would eat their food. But this one guy that I got to know real well, his name was Barry Marshall. And so he was the guy that booked all the shows, and he was pretty much the tour manager. You know, took care of everything. And so he told me this one story that always stuck in my head. He told me a lot of stories, but it'd take a long time. But this one story was telling me that when he was young, because I was wearing cowboy boots, but I had to take them off because you can't wear leather around Paul. I mean, it's just out of respect for his late wife, Linda.
Because?
Well, because of killing animals.
Okay.
So I had on a pair of boots. So he was telling me back years ago, he said, I used to wear cowboy boots. And so I don't know if you remember this or not, but you remember as a kid, I do, when you didn't have the money, your parents didn't have the money to buy a pair of shoes every time your shoes would go bad, but your flapper, you know, the shoe would, the sole would come off, and you just kick it and keep walking. I've done it many times as a kid. And so Barry Marshall was telling me the story. He said, I wore boots one time back years ago, before all this, you know, they started getting more strict about, you know, not wearing any leather products and stuff like that.
Okay.
Which he was telling me about his boots. He said one time he was in this hotel and he thought, well, my boots all coming apart, the heels coming apart. He said, so he had this brainstorm about getting some glue. And so he took his boot off and stuck glue all over the sole of this boot. And he raised his bed up and he said he put a book there and he lowered it down. And he said the next morning he got up and he grabbed his boot and it was stuck to the carpet. So he had to literally take a knife and cut the carpet out. So he said the whole carpet was on the bottom of his boot. So I always thought that was a kind of a funny story, you know, from the road.
Yeah.
You know, something that comes directly from somebody like Barry Marshall, and he's a well-known guy. You know, he does a lot more than just Paul McCartney.
Well, he's the only one. I know you brought a lot of laminates from over the years over here today for us to look at.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw 3 letters from Barry Marshall of Paul McCartney thanking you for the years. And
I love the guy.
Didn't look like you got that kind of an acknowledgement from many of the other artists. I just thought that was really special.
I just couldn't find them. I mean, those letters. But anyway, I have, but they were special to me. You know, you were asking me about special, and then Kenny Chesney was a super guy to work for too. He was just like one of the other guys. Yeah. You know, we'd be outside playing basketball, and in every year after the tour was over, he would take us to like the island, St. Thomas Island, St. John Island. And it was a great getaway. You know, great time. But there's a lot of artists that I could think of that I could highlight, but you know, those two especially. Of course, in George Strait organization, I couldn't ask for a better, you know, last 20 years of my life working for them.
Tell us what's happening now.
Well, right now we're out on tour. We just got back from a tour like this. Was it last weekend? And
but your role is changing with them, correct?
Oh yeah, well yeah. I went from being a bus driver to kind of like a assistant to John Michael would be, which I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
You know, I instead of driving, I fly in, and I get there and I take care of make sure our transportation's set up for picking up the band from the airport.
Yeah.
And then I drive the golf cart, take the guys on stage, off stage, and run around. It's fun.
Yeah.
Just run around the stadium, and then on Saturday after the show, go to the hotel. Sunday morning, I'm on a plane back home.
Yeah.
So not because normally, you know, it would be 2-3 days on the road getting home. So now I'm just I'm just kind of like, I wouldn't call me an assistant manager, but I'm kind of like a assistant to
the tour manager.
To the tour manager. Since
And just so the audience knows, John Michael is the keyboard player for George, and it's been
super
there
guy. Takes good
probably
care
as
of me.
long as you, right?
He's been with
around the
George
same?
about equally same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Back in the when we first started with George, it's funny because I weighed 100 pounds heavier, 120 pounds heavier than I am now.
Yeah.
And so they decided, well, means I'm the new guy, put me on this top bunk. You know, 360 pounds is what I weighed back then.
Yeah.
And John Michael had the top bunk, and so Leroy Eichler went to John Michael and said, "Hey, John," he said, "you wouldn't consider switching with Alan, would you?" Because he had the bottom bunk, which I've had since then, 20 years.
Thanks to him.
Thanks to John Michael. So I thank you, John Michael, if you see this.
Yeah.
He's been super to me. Me and him go way back, and I can tell you a lot of stories, man. Maybe for the next time.
So can John Michael. He's
John
a storyteller
Michael
himself.
He is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I met him back with an organization that I joined and served with back in 2013, and we had taken 8 heroes, whether it be first responders or veterans, down to South Texas on a 90,000 acre ranch. And we've got John Michael Whitby, we've got Zach Nytompt, who's another singer-songwriter, Gabe Garcia. I think Gabe got second on Nashville Star out of like 60,000 people. Wow. We've got, Cody Johnson was the year before that, and just all these artists that come down and lend their gifts around a campfire while these guys over a 4-day hunt at night, and you really get to see these guys finally get to breathe and connect, and that's when I realized what music and the outdoors would allow, would give veterans and the terminally ill that I got to host. And we had Matt Hughes. Yeah, Matt's 9-time UFC world champion, as you know, and Matt was a spokesman at Trinity Oaks, which is the organization that I was with, and one of my favorite memories with John Michael was that I was driving. John Michael's riding shotgun, Matt's right behind me, and one of the other Trinity Oaks volunteers, Ryan Cantu's, in the back. And we just sunset and waiting for the guys to come in from hunting. And Matt Hughes said to John Michael out of the blue, he goes, "Hey, John Michael, what do you say we trade 2 for 2? And John Michael just kind of bobbed his head. He never looked back at him. He was like, 2 for 2? Matt goes, "Yeah." And John Michael goes, "I think we can do that." Well, I wasn't sure what they were talking about, but I figured out that they were talking about trading 2 UFC tickets for 2 George Strait tickets to a show and a UFC fight. And then you fast forward, that was in 2016. Matt was then hit by a train in 2017 and nearly lost his life. Truly a miracle, traumatic brain injury, 19-day induced coma. He spent the last 6 years relearning how to walk and talk again. And I mean it when you know as well as I do, miracle.
Yeah.
And you were at a George Strait show, and I believe it was in Vegas somewhere. And I hadn't talked to Matt since 2016. This is 2021 or 2020. And out of the blue, I'm not friends with him on Facebook, but I get a message on Facebook Messenger that said, "Hey, Garrett, Matt Hughes here." And I'm looking at this thing thinking, what's going on? And I see the dots kind of bouncing like he's still waiting for me to reply.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what he wanted. And then he said, "I hear you want to ask me a question." And he said, "Alan Sowersby told me to ask you that." And I immediately called you, and I was like, "What is going on?" And you said, I forgot to tell you, he knows you're doing an event with Legacy Farmstead, and you're bringing in Aaron Watson. It was for some military veterans, and he just wants you to invite him."
Yeah.
And out of all of that, and inviting him down, and him always saying that these military veterans and first responders were always my biggest fight fans. So if there's anything that I can do, I want to be there. And we got to bring him back into all of that after him healing up and being able to independently travel again, because it was within a year. I mean, for 5 years, he didn't get to go anywhere without somebody by his side. And we got to do a lot with Matt. And then, it's been 5 years and he still hadn't hunted. And I asked him, I said, how long has it been since you've hunted? And he took his glasses off and he looked at me and he said, I haven't hunted since the accident. And as you know, he had a hunting show.
Yeah.
And it was called Matt Hughes, Uncaged with Matt Hughes. And he was traveling all over the world. And he hadn't hunted since then.
God.
And I asked him, I was like, do you want to hunt? And he looked at me and he was like, I'd love to. And I think you know what we did, but we lined out a hunt for him, and I got to surround him with the men and women that he's came to serve him, thanks to Andy Vaughn at Circle B Ranch in Abilene, Texas. And he got a beautiful Addicts and continued to serve with us for a few more occasions. And hopefully we'll do some more down the road, but just another connection that you helped reconnect with.
Yeah, it was funny. He was there at the show.
Yeah.
And so I was talking to him, and I brought you up. That's how all that happened. And so I give him your number. I said, here, call him or text him. So
wow.
Well,
this is what happens when we all promote each other and instead of trying to promote ourselves. That's a true example of that. So.
Exactly right, man.
Yeah.
And wouldn't have it any other way, man. But no, there's so many things that I haven't done. I want to do. I mean, that's one good thing about being older.
Yeah.
Sometimes like these guys will like, oh, we got to take care of Pops here. Like, all right, I'll let you.
Good. What do you want to do?
Myself?
Yeah. What do you got out there? What's on your bucket list?
I would love to go out into the country or something like that and just hang out for a week or something. Like we talked about doing, like whenever we met up in Colorado.
Yes, sir.
Just go out and just totally just relax, chill.
Yeah.
Look at some beautiful country. And just forget about everything. But all is good for me. I'm having the time of my life. Still working.
Yes, you are.
And like I say, leaving this Saturday with somebody Saturday to go drive to Nashville to fly home. And I leave. I get back on the 10th. And I leave out on the 12th with George.
Okay. And
then we're going to Buffalo, New York next.
Okay. And what's he got? 2 to 3 more shows on the calendar this year altogether?
3 total left.
And you guys are playing with who?
Yeah, Chris Stapleton and Little Big Town is there also.
Yeah.
And then pretty much, I think that's who their lineup is right now.
Yeah.
There's different ones coming in and out, but 3's good enough. That's good.
Yeah.
Look forward to, I'm already looking forward to next year already. So
yeah.
And so
I think he is too. I know he's still talking about continuing on.
He always talks about it on stage, like, I'm not ready to give up yet. So everybody's kind of hoping that.
Yeah. Well, I also know that you guys lost 3 guys last year in the band, correct?
Yes.
Who were they?
Okay, first of all, we lost Irv Weasley, which was George's manager. And basically, was there from day one.
Yeah.
George and all that. When he started out.
Yeah.
And then we lost Gene Elders, our fiddle player.
Yes, sir.
And then the same day. So I got 2 calls that day. One for Irv, one for Gene Elders. And good friend of mine.
Yeah.
Great person. And then right before we were leaving out on tour the next day, we were doing rehearsing in San Antonio. And then Tommy Foote, which was George's original drummer. A lot of people don't know that, first drummer.
Yeah.
So Tommy Foote went home and wasn't feeling great. I called him, and he even told me, he said, hey, he called me Big Al. Big Al, I said, call me later. I'm going to take a nap. And that's the last I ever heard from him.
Yeah. And
so I was sleepy because we were just getting back from Irv's funeral. And so I got called to fly to Arizona and do a drive back with Neil Young, back to Texas, San Antonio. So I got in like wee in the morning, and I went home and I told my wife, I said, no matter what, just don't wake me up. I turned my phone off. So Leroy tried to call me to tell me about Tommy Foote had passed. And so he called my wife. And so he told her, and
Yeah.
she wakes me up and said, "You better take this phone call." And so I remember Leroy telling me, "Are you sitting down?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Tommy Foote just died." And so that
Yeah.
was the news I got. And I was a,
Yeah.
and we were leaving like literally, I believe, the next day. And so we just had to kind of suck it all up. We didn't have a tour manager, so we all just took the bus. That's when we had the bus and loaded up, and it was a very quiet ride.
I bet it was.
You know, I don't even remember where we went. It just didn't. You know, I just remembered we had finished up that year. You know, last year without these fellas, and this year is starting off real good, and everything is going great and smoothly. So, but yeah, so yeah, we're down to like 3 more shows with George, but that don't mean I'm not gonna be working. I'll be out doing something.
I know you will.
Might as well. I'll be out driving a bus or like just like now. I'll be leaving Saturday, but to me, I look at it like an opportunity. You know, hey, I'm still able to do it, so why not?
Yeah.
You know, and of course, my good buddy tells me this all the time. Leroy Eichler. He always says, "Get it while you can, buddy. You know, you never know when that day happens when you can't."
Yeah.
And so throughout the last 20 years, when I wasn't driving for George, everybody that called me, I just say, yeah, yes. You know, even though I didn't really want to. There was a lot of times I'm thinking like, oh man, 3 months out.
Yeah.
You know, or even a month out. You know, you think about that. And then, but I always thought about that. Those words like, get it while you can, man. So I always did.
You know, still are.
But I'm getting better at saying no.
I don't know. I don't know that you are.
I'm getting a little better. You know,
well, that's not a bad thing, especially if you can pull through. But
oh yeah, I'm looking forward. We still got a lot of this year left and a lot of upcoming things. I know you've got a lot of things coming up.
You're driving for one of the biggest stars ever on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Give us an idea. Give the audience an idea of what that's like.
When I first started off with George, of course, it was really it was kind of awkward in some ways because it was like. Walk on a bus and here's some guys who are your heroes, that you've known of for your whole life. The best band to me, Ace and the whole band. There is no band out there better than them. That's my personal opinion, and I'll stick with it.
Yeah,
and I do mean that. So when I first started out, of course, I walked on this bus and didn't know anybody, and it was awkward because I was like, hey Terry Hill, hey Ronnie Huckabee, and all that. I knew all these guys. But they were also looking at me like, can this guy drive a bus without falling asleep at the wheel and all that? So I had to prove myself. So it took me a long time. So Tommy Foote and me, I love Tommy Foote. I miss him so much. And so right at first, we didn't always see eye to eye, me and Tommy. So I was like, I want to go to the show. I want to go see the George Strait show too. I don't want to be in a hotel sleeping while the George Strait show is going on. So I thought to myself, well, I'll go to the show. I'm good. It's only a 400-mile drive tonight. That's no big deal. I can do it. My eyes closed, but that's not the way that they looked at it.
I understand.
And a lot of bands don't look at it that way. They want you to sleep and be rested and all that. And I never, ever put them in jeopardy.
Right.
I would never do that. I always slept and then I'd come to the show later and so forth. But true story, Tommy Foote one day called Leroy, my boss, and said, hey, I don't know about Alan, if he's going to make it or not. He's not sleeping and all that. And so Leroy comes back to Tommy and said, wait a minute now. Alan knows what he's doing. He's a professional, for one thing. He said, he knows what he's doing. He said, so if he thinks he's fine, I'm sticking with him. Don't make me go, don't make me, go any further with this.
Okay.
So, no, that's what Leroy had told Tommy Foote. And so, but I got to thinking, well, I think I got a point. I need to stay home and stay in my hotel and sleep, get up, be ready to drive 10 hours if I need to, which you can legally drive, and then sleep for 10 and drive 10. So, but yeah, it was awkward first, when I first walked on that bus the first time. And it took me time. It took me a little while and to get to know everybody. And then it was just like a family. After a while, they realized that I was a good driver, smooth driver. I'm not saying I was, but they thought I was. So, smooth driver. And so once they figured out that I was their I had their interest in my, in my thoughts. We all just become a big family. Then the guys started talking to me and telling me stories. I mean, I've got all kinds of great stories.
Yeah.
Mike Daly's a very interesting guy.
Yeah.
Mike Daly's grandfather was Pappy Daly, and he had a recording studio in Houston, Texas. And we talked a lot about that. Matter of fact, George recorded some of his first stuff there, Pappy Daly's.
And Mike is?
Mike
Which
Daly,
place?
steel guitar player.
Got you.
Interesting
Yes,
guy, nice guy. But me and him used to sit in the front, and we'd always listen to the old station, the old music, and so as time went on, I got to know the band real well, and now, of course, we're just a big family. We just never think twice about it. We're just all natural, and they've never treated me any different than they would, I mean, it's always been equal, even hotels and motels.
Give the audience an idea of what one of these buses look like. Describe it for someone that's never seen one.
45 foot long. Prevos is what we mostly have, 45 foot. And so it depends on whether or not the Star Coach just has one big bedroom in the back and then maybe 4 bunks in the front for the drivers and the tour manager. But a band bus has 12 bunks in it, in a front living room, bathroom, and then your 12 bunks, and then back living room in the back. So you got plenty of places to be. You can be in your bunk, you can be in the front living room, you can be in the front with me.
So there's a rear lounge.
Yeah, rear
there's
lounge.
A front lounge, and in between that, you've got 12 bunks.
12 bunks. And every bunk has TVs, satellite, internet, has it all. So you're not doing without. You got a bathroom, icebox full of drinks, and cabinets full of snacks and stuff. Yeah. But yeah, as time went on, as years went on, of course, I went out and started working with other people when George wasn't working. So it opened a lot of doors for me to work for a lot of different artists, that I work for. And so, but
he's priority.
Oh gosh, yeah, priority, man. Yeah, I'd give up. I wouldn't take nothing on without first checking our schedule with George. Yeah. But George has been a super good guy to work for. He's he's always nice fella, and all his family are great. And,
tell him about your communication, you and him.
Oh, years and years ago, always when I see him, I'd always do like peace, and then George got to where when he seen me, he was doing the peace back to me, sign. So I always thought there's our connection right there, and so now everything is just so easy going. It's just like we're all a big, family. We don't think nothing of it, on and off stage. So my job I'm doing now is I take the band on stage in a golf cart, and I go pick them up, take them back to the bus, because we're doing stadiums now. But years ago we were doing like that easy walk from the bus to the stage. Yeah. But now you've got 200-300 yards to walk to the stage. Yeah. So we're using golf carts and stuff.
So one of the other things that we mentioned, we just touched on Mary Jo, your wife, earlier.
Yeah.
And one of the other things we want to ask you is this long, traveling this many miles. Yeah. Literally millions of miles, I would imagine.
Yeah. I'm thinking. I've never calculated it.
How do you keep a marriage together?
Well, it's her. She's been a great wife, and I can't say enough about her. She's been great, and she's given me a lot of breathing room. She knew I loved doing it. Going out and working and driving and what I was doing. So she never stopped me, and I'd always get home when I could. So I missed a lot, and I regret that. I regret the fact that there was a lot of tours I was on that maybe my sons or my kids were playing sports, and my grandkids and all that, and I'd be on the phone going, "Hey, what's happening? What's happening? Are they winning? Are they?" I'd be on the telephone, missing it. Thinking like, "Oh man, I just want to cry and put my head between the pillows of theirs." But when you're on the road, you gotta, when you're out there and you commit, you gotta do it.
Show must go on.
Show's got to go on. So your job is to get to that hotel and sleep, as many hours as you can. Get up and be behind that wheel safe, and drive as good as you can. No rocky, missing elks in the road and doing all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, before we wrap this up, let's talk about that. And I know we've got the clip, which we will somehow embed in this. But let's talk about what happened, the close call with the elk.
Oh, that was Seattle. we're on our way to Seattle, Washington. And so it's about 4 o'clock in the morning, you know, just there, probably the sun was fixing to start coming up. And I'm driving along and I'm just kind of looking to the left and I'm thinking like, it was only like a two-way, or it had like a 2-lane, but it had like a little access, a little roadway on the side to get off to park. And so I'm looking to the left and I'm seeing that there's like a flashlight, but it turned out to be a telephone. And there was a car in front of me blocking my view. And I was pretty far back, and I wasn't speeding either. You know, that's been proven because it was all, the film that y'all are going to show, that wasn't me, that was on the bus. That camera is on that bus all the time.
Yes, sir.
And it only goes off if there's an impact or a real harsh movement.
Okay.
You know, like a real hard movement or something, or hard stopping or something. So I saw this camera, and about this time I see this little car in front of me swerve to the right, and just when he swerved to the right, I saw this elk right in the middle of the road. So instead of hitting it, I had to miss it, because if I'd have hit it, you know, dead on, it could have turned us over.
And there is a ravine on the other side.
There was a big ravine straight down.
Yeah.
There was a little guardrail. They wouldn't have stopped a 60,000-pound bus. You know.
Did that video make the rounds?
It did. Yeah. Matter of fact, they called me. They called me instantly from the where they monitor that, and said, "Were you just in a wreck?" I went, "No, I just missed a wreck. You know, I didn't hit." They said, "Well, it shows that there was such a traumatic G-force that it kicked the camera on, and so it recorded like 13 seconds or what, you know, whatever.
Okay.
And then it cuts back off again."
See.
So that's what happened there. And then so the guy started getting up, going like, "What just happened?" I said, "You know, and me, I'm thinking like, I can't prove it because I'm already past the elk." And so I get a phone call, and they said, "Okay, well, yeah, this is the office. We just seen where you might have been in a possible accident or something." And I told them, "No, I wouldn't. I avoided it." And so they sent me the video. So I pull off at the next roadside park. And so I said, "Guys, here we go. Here's the video." And Tommy, of course, goes, "You saved our lives again, dude. You saved our lives again." Because we did that one time before in Louisiana.
Yeah.
That's another incident we.
Well, that looked like a really, really close call.
Yeah, it was. And so, you know, the film that you're going to show, that little clip, it doesn't even show part of the intensity of that turn. It was like a turn and then back to the left turn to avoid, you know,
And hoping
turn
you're
over.
not a tip. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we saw that video, it was my proof.
Yeah.
It was like, it's just not my hearsay saying I almost hit an elk. They're all going like, "Yeah, sure, he fell asleep at the wheel."
Yeah.
Or something. But anyway, so.
Well, Alan, I have no doubt you and I are doing more.
Oh, a lot more, man.
And
I'm ready anytime you want me on here. I'm ready. I got
we
a lot
may very
more
well do
stories,
that,
man.
I know you do.
I got a lot more stuff that we can go back a long ways and pull up some stuff. And by the way, I'm going to send you some more pictures. I just thought of some more I have that would be kind of cool.
Bring them on.
I will, brother.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, man.
I love you.
Love you too, man.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Thanks, buddy.